And when a homeless man approached Barron Trump asking for just $1, no one foresaw what would happen next. A simple act of kindness would spark a national movement, reunite a broken family, and change lives forever. The city's heartbeat was relentless. Cars honked, pedestrians wove through the streets, and conversations filled the air. On the corner of Broad Street and 17th Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, a man sat slumped against the wall of an old convenience store. His clothes, worn and layered, offered little protection from the bitter winter wind. Beside him lay a cardboard sign reading, "Anything helps. God bless Dot." His name was Leonard, though most people never asked. At 42, he had been living on the streets for nearly a year, a series of misfortunes tearing away everything he once held dear. Each day felt like a coin toss. Sometimes someone dropped loose change in his cup. More often, they hurried by, eyes averted. Leonard adjusted his beanie and shivered, observing the endless stream of footsteps before him, high heels, sneakers, polished loafers. Then something made him look up. A pair of pristine white sneakers stood just feet away, expensive and obviously worn by someone young and privileged. Intrigued, Leonard tilted his head, curiosity sparking. The teenager wearing them was tall, composed, and had his hands tucked in the pockets of a sleek jacket. Leonard squinted against the sunlight. The boy seemed familiar, yet Leonard couldn't place him. He was waiting at the corner, scrolling on his phone, apparently unaware of the attention he drew. People around them whispered, some stealthily taking pictures. Leonard hesitated. He rarely asked strangers directly for money unless they locked eyes with him. But there was something oddly still about this teenager, like he had time to spare in a world where everyone else rushed by. Mustering courage, Leonard cleared his throat. "Hey, young man," he called, forcing a small smile. "Could you spare $1?" The boy froze mid-scroll. He turned slowly, head tilted as though verifying that Leonard was indeed speaking to him. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Leonard braced for rejection, just another no or averted glance, but the next words caught him off guard. "What do you need it for?" the boy asked. His tone was calm, serious, yet without scorn. Leonard swallowed hard. He hadn't expected an actual conversation. "A cup of coffee would be nice," he replied, voice raspy from the cold. "Maybe a sandwich if I'm lucky." He felt uneasy at being questioned, yet the boy's expression showed genuine curiosity, not condescension. The teenager stepped closer, phone now forgotten. Leonard sensed passers-by watching them, maybe judging the odd sight of a teenage Trump stopping for a homeless man. But Leonard wanted to disappear from their stares, but the boy's unwavering attention rooted him in place. "What's your name?" the boy asked. "Leonard," he answered quietly. Had a faint nod. "I'm Barron," the teenager said simply, no arrogance in his introduction, just sincerity. The city's hum returned, but something had shifted. The air between them felt charged, as if this mundane encounter might become something more. Leonard squirmed slightly, unsure how to respond. Barron crouched so they were at eye level, a move that startled Leonard. Nobody had ever done that. Leonard hesitated. He rarely told his story, yet something in Barron's demeanor prompted honesty. "Almost a year," Leonard admitted. "Lost my job after the plant closed. Then my health went downhill. Couldn't keep up with rent," and he swallowed. "It's been a mess ever since." Barron listened intently, his gaze focused, not pitying. Leonard felt the crowd's attention intensify. People stopped to stare at the teenage son kneeling beside a homeless man. Leonard's jaw tightened. He shook his head. "None left. My parents passed years ago. My brother. We haven't talked in ages." He managed a hollow laugh. "Hard to lose more when you've lost it all." Barron took a moment, as if reflecting on every word. Then, without warning, he reached into his pocket. Leonard's heart quickened. He'd only asked for $1, but Barron pulled out a crisp $100 bill. Leonard blinked, stunned. "Here," Barron offered the bill. "This should cover more than coffee." Okay? A Leonard gaped. Are you serious? His voice cracked. Why would you do that? Well, Barron merely shrugged. Because I can. Before Leonard could process this generosity, Barron leaned in. But listen, he said softly, this isn't just about the money. I want you to promise me something. Leonard's throat felt dry. And what's that? And if I help you today, Barron explained, you help yourself tomorrow. Leonard felt tears well up. Never had someone not only handed him such a large sum, but asked him to commit to changing his life. After a moment, he nodded. Words failed him. Good, Barron said, standing. Around them, a small crowd formed. Leonard noticed people filming with their phones, which made him flush with embarrassment. Yet Barron remained composed, pulling out a pen and notepad to scribble down an address. Go here tomorrow morning, Barron instructed, handing him the note. They'll help you. Tell them Barron sent you. Leonard's hands shook slightly as he unfolded the paper. It was the address of a local shelter and resource center, rumored to offer robust support for people in dire straits. I'll make sure they're expecting you, Barron added, his tone steady. Leonard held the note and the $100 bill like sacred objects. It wasn't just kindness, it felt like hope, a tangible path forward. He sensed this moment was a pivotal turning point. Leonard kept staring at the bill and the note, mind whirling with disbelief. Barron stayed a moment longer, studying Leonard's reaction with an odd intensity, as though he expected more than thanks. Leonard's voice quavered when he finally found words. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Barron's lips curved in a faint smile. Everyone has a story. Yours just hasn't been heard. If I can help, I should. Leonard wasn't used to sincerity from strangers. Skepticism kicked in. People don't usually stop like this without wanting something. But Barron crouched again, meeting Leonard's eyes. I expect nothing. But small actions can spark bigger changes, he gestured at the address in Leonard's hand. They've got job training, counseling, everything you need. All I'm asking is for you to show up. Leonard shuddered, the weight of years on the street pressing on him. What if I screw up? Everyone does, Barron said softly. Quitting is the only real failure. Leonard's chest tightened. The city noise around them seemed to fade. Forget them, Barron murmured. Right now, it's just us. Leonard exhaled, gratitude and shame swirling inside him. No one had ever taken time to see him as more than a nuisance or an eyesore. Of all right, he said, voice gaining steadiness. I'll go. I promise. Relief showed in Barron's eyes. He stood, dusted off his knees, and looked to the onlookers. Then, glancing at Leonard, he spoke loudly enough for others to hear. With that, Barron turned, and the crowd parted as he walked away. Leonard watched his figure vanish into the city flow, feeling a warmth in his chest. For the first time in ages, he felt hope. At some clutched grocery bags, others appeared as uncertain as Leonard felt. He tightened his grip on the note in his pocket, remembering the promise he'd made. The crisp $100 bill was safely tucked in his jacket, a tangible reminder that something extraordinary had happened. Entering the building, he was greeted by warm air much kinder than the icy wind outside. At the front desk sat a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. She looked up, smiling. Can I help you? Leonard slid the scrap of paper forward. Barron sent me, he said awkwardly. Her eyes flicked over it. She smiled, wider. You must be Leonard. We've been expecting you. Come on, let's get you set up. Nerves tightened in Leonard's stomach as he followed her. Soon, a caseworker listened to his story attentive, without a hint of judgment. They devised a plan to help him get back on his feet, including a place to sleep in the shelter, a medical checkup for his health concerns, and a spot in a job training program. It was overwhelming, but in a hopeful way. For the first time in so long, Leonard felt that the shattered pieces of his life could be gathered up again. But later, he sat on the edge of a cot in the shelter's dormitory, replaying the last 24 hours in his head. Barron's words echoed. The vow Leonard had made pressed on him. I help you today. You help yourself tomorrow. It wouldn't be easy, but it felt possible. While Leonard focused on his steps toward stability, events he knew nothing about were unfolding beyond the shelter walls. Someone had filmed his encounter with Barron the previous day, and the clip had spread like wildfire on social media. Suddenly, the teenage Trump crouched in the cold beside a homeless man became front-page news. In the footage, Barron could be seen handing over money and speaking softly, though the words weren't entirely clear. That debate swirled. Was it just a PR stunt, or was it genuine empathy from someone with privilege? Either way, the video resonated. People were moved by the rawness of the moment, one man's despair, a young person's kindness, and the sense that a single gesture might spark bigger changes. Online, the clip amassed millions of views overnight. There's still human, read one comment, referencing the homeless man's plight. Others wrote, finally, some good news, or maybe we should do more than just watch. And Leonard remained unaware of the viral storm. He was too busy taking small steps, scheduling doctor's appointments, filling out job applications with staff help, and slowly letting himself believe that his life might turn around. Within days, Leonard sensed changes in both himself and the environment. The staff treated him with consistent warmth and respect. They didn't see him as just another statistic. They saw a man in need of support. Fellow residents at the shelter offered encouragement, and some asked him about his story. He gave them the simpler version, not realizing it was about to be broadcast far more widely. And a quiet confidence grew in him. He started each morning with a sense of purpose, attending group workshops and following the plan he had discussed with the caseworker. Hope Outreach was less of a safety net and more of a springboard, nudging him toward independence. Yet outside, Leonard's story was anything but quiet. News outlets covered the viral video, dissecting it from every angle. Pundits argued over Barron's motives. Countless viewers debated the meaning of real altruism. Social media brimmed with messages about how one small act of humanity had restored faith in many. Leonard discovered the commotion only when a staff member at the shelter showed him a news segment. Seeing himself on screen, eyes hollow, posture defeated, made him cringe. He hardly recognized that version of himself. Embarrassment mingled with gratitude, and an unnameable feeling hit him, maybe the sense that his past year of hardship was no longer hidden in the shadows. Meanwhile, Barron avoided all public commentary. He declined interviews and dodged the media storm. He had never intended to become a headline. He simply wanted to help one person. Out of the spotlight, he quietly funneled donations to Hope Outreach, ensuring their programs could expand. His silence only fueled speculation, with some praising him for humility, others suspecting orchestrated drama. Regardless, the video sparked a larger movement. People launched their own small acts of kindness, posting them under hashtags like Kindness Challenge and Pay It Forward. Shelters across the country saw donations spike. Volunteers poured in, moved by the notion that even minimal gestures could save someone's life. Leonard soon felt this movement in a more personal way. One evening in the shelter's common area, a man approached him hesitantly. He looked vaguely familiar. "And Leonard?" the man asked, voice trembling. Leonard squinted, searching the stranger's features. Recognition dawned. "Paul," he whispered, heart pounding. It was his younger brother, the one he'd lost contact with over a decade ago. They stared at each other, regret and relief blending in their eyes. "I saw the video," Paul admitted, taking a seat. "Didn't realize how bad things got for you. I'm sorry I wasn't there." Thirst threatened to spill. Leonard shook his head, trying to keep composure. "Not your fault. I pushed everyone away. I guess I just vanished." Paul rested a hand on Leonard's shoulder. "I should have tried harder." And so, in a plain common room with worn chairs and bright fluorescent lights, two brothers began to mend old wounds. It was bittersweet, reminding them of lost time, but also offering the chance to rebuild. Leonard realized that while his path to a better future was just beginning, This reunion was an unexpected blessing. Over the following weeks, Leonard's daily routine stabilized. He visited doctors, learned about job openings, and worked with counselors to address the emotional toll of homelessness. Day by day, he felt a cautious optimism grow. And the staff at Hope Outreach treated him like someone worth believing in. Their unwavering support chipped away at his lingering self-doubt. Every workshop, every conversation, felt like a brick placed in the foundation of his new life. As other shelter residents, noticing his determination, sometimes asked him for advice or simply told him they found his story inspiring. Outside, headlines continued, with Leonard's face occasionally flashing on TV news segments that recapped the Barron Trump encounter. The commentary didn't always matter to Leonard. He was focused on fulfilling the promise he'd made to help himself, one step at a time. Yet the help he'd received had also triggered something bigger, a wave of kindness. Donations poured into Hope Outreach, enabling them to offer more beds and better resources. The staff excitedly shared that they could now help additional people who'd been turned away in the past. For Leonard, it was humbling to think his small encounter had unlocked new opportunities for others. Barriers remained. Leonard knew that one stroke of luck wouldn't erase all the problems that had piled up, but every morning he reminded himself how far he had come from sitting in the cold, sign in hand, with no hope for tomorrow. Now, he had a plan, even if it was fragile. Several times, Leonard thought about sending a message to Barron, but he had no direct way to contact him. That part of Leonard admired that refusal to be hailed as a hero. It spoke of sincerity, and for Leonard, that sincerity had changed everything. Outside the shelter, the world debated a well-known teenager's motives. Inside, Leonard simply tried to focus on his own journey. He applied for entry-level positions through the center's job services. He also reconnected with Paul, discovering they shared more in common than they'd realized. Late at night, they'd sit and talk about their childhood, the mistakes both had made, and the possibility of forging a stronger bond moving forward. Gradually, Leonard began to see his hardships not as a permanent scar but as a story of resilience. He had fallen hard, but maybe that fall could have purpose if it helped him rebuild with greater understanding. The entire year on the streets had tested him, but from that test emerged not just a new perspective, but also an unshakable desire to never let himself or others slip through the cracks again. Though the media frenzy around the video eventually ebbed, the impact lingered. Local non-profits reported surges in volunteer numbers and fresh donations. Strangers formed online communities dedicated to replicating Barron's seemingly small but profound gesture. They scoured their cities looking for ways to help people who, like Leonard, needed a lifeline. Some critics called it a fleeting trend, destined to fade once the news cycle moved on. Others saw it as a spark that might evolve into sustained change. Leonard, for his part, chose to remain optimistic. He had already witnessed how one act of kindness, someone genuinely seeing him, could start a chain reaction. Not everyone's journey turned out exactly like his, he knew that. But he felt confident that more lives would be saved or changed each time a bystander paused to consider that a homeless individual had a name, a story, and a right to be treated with dignity. A few months in, Leonard secured a small apartment through a housing assistance program. He wasn't wealthy or fully secure yet, but having his own space, no matter how modest, felt monumental. The state parted ways with the shelter, exchanging tearful hugs and heartfelt thanks to the staff who had guided him. But he promised he'd be back not to stay, but to volunteer and pay forward the kindness he'd received. One evening in that bare-bones apartment, just a bed, a table, and a second-hand couch, he sat with a battered notebook, jotting down the events that led him there. At the top of the page, he wrote, "Because someone believed in me." He thought about his brother, about the staff at Hope Outreach, and about Barron, the teenager whose name he hadn't recognized at first but who had essentially saved his life. Leonard closed his notebook, mind drifting to that initial encounter, a city street corner. A biting wind, the humiliating vulnerability of asking for $1. He remembered the crisp feel of the $100 bill in his hand and the look on Barron's face as he'd insisted Leonard promise to help himself. He had kept that promise, and in doing so, rediscovered hope, family, and purpose. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Leonard realized the chain of events was far bigger than either him or Barron alone. It was about people witnessing kindness and feeling emboldened to share their own. It was about understanding that everyone, no matter how lost they appear, might only be one gesture away from a new beginning. Perhaps the greatest lesson was that life can turn on small hinges. In that random moment, Barron's willingness to meet Leonard's gaze and offer support had changed both of them. And if a single conversation on a cold Cleveland street could spark a national wave of giving, maybe countless other lives could pivot on similarly small moments of compassion. Leonard wasn't naive about the challenges ahead. Finding steady work, tackling lingering health problems, repairing relationships, it would all take time. He carried the memory of that day like a guiding light, reminding him that there was still good in the world and within himself. Standing at his apartment window, he gazed out at the bustling streets below, lights flickering across the skyline. Tomorrow, he'd apply for a permanent job placement. He'd also visit Paul, continuing to reconnect after years apart, and he planned to drop by Hope Outreach, volunteering for a few hours. The man who once sat in rags on the sidewalk now felt hope radiating from every choice he made. In the end, one spark of kindness had ignited a fire of compassion, proving that nobody is too far gone to find their way back. Even in the darkest alleyways of despair, a single hand extended could illuminate a path toward renewal. For Leonard, that hand belonged to a teenager who asked for nothing in return, only that Leonard bet on himself. And in doing so, Leonard found that his story was just beginning.